Hi everyone, Comic Reviewer here, this time reviewing on Adventure Comics number 271. Now, as you know, Adventure Comics number 271 is meant to cover the Silver Age origin of how Superboy met Lex Luthor, and how Lex Luthor came to be who he was. Now, the story had been adapted for the Super Friends cartoon, and referenced in Robot Chicken when they did their DC special. And yeah, the point of the Silver Age storylines were meant to be clean and simple origins. I think the point of writers like Jeff Jones and all that were meant to tell more simple origins, giving an insight to what they could do with the characters in their own sort of takes on things. And the cover mainly has Superboy punching kryptonite rocks, with Lex Luthor dwindling his plan. And the story is meant to be known as how Luthor met Superboy, with a young Lex Luthor saying, "Gee, Superboy, it's swell of you to build this modern laboratory at super speed for me, out of all that scrap metal. Anything for a friend, Luthor." And of course, we see how Superboy stops to meet Lex Luthor, ends up getting weakened by the kryptonite, and keep in mind on when Krypton exploded, chunks of it ended up on Earth. And we see Superboy saying, "Oh, the pain. Hold on, Superboy, I'll get rid of the meteor," and chucks it down. They end up meeting each other, where Lex Luthor shows Superboy all of his trophies and pictures, and even says he's one of the greatest heroes in the world. So as a little thank you, Superboy ends up making Lex Luthor a new laboratory, bringing him chemicals that he transferred that are still unknown, and pretty much does warn him that some of these chemicals are unknown, so they don't know the damage that could happen. So we mainly see Superboy flying off, and of course decides to repay him with a kryptonite antidote. And after doing some experiments, decides to get out with this sort of project, where he makes a metal claw, bringing in the kryptonite and planning to chunk it back down, and creates the sort of kryptonite antidote. But of course, because of his carelessness, ends up knocking down one of the canisters and saying, "The chemical flask I overturned has set the lab afire, aflames, smoke, radiation," and calls for Superboy's help. But of course, we see how Superboy uses his super breath, and because of Lex Luthor's actions and Superboy's carelessness, ended up with Lex Luthor going bold, and ends up him blaming him for destroying his research and everything that he worked on. But of course, this is where you can tell Lex Luthor wants to play the victim, even though it was his own fault. Well, Superboy does point out it was an accident, and again, when you're a hero, you can't always make the right call. But of course, we see how he pretends to be his friend again, and after he leaves, destroys every bit of his Superboy memorabilia, saying how much he hates him. And of course, decides to get back at him by creating a kind of placebo-like antidote. And as soon as Superboy brings in the space globe, they end up going into space. And we see Crypto, who says, "Superboy hasn't bothered by those kryptonite meteors. They must be made of false kryptonite, which looks exactly like kryptonite, but it's harmless." But of course, flees as soon as he gets hurt by it. And we see how Lex Luthor gloats, saying that the antidote would eventually wear off, and decides to show him that he can be a better scientist without his help. So the first part of his plan is to build a sort of weather control tower, which of course works at first, which the townspeople thank him for, but because of the over-the-top heat, people suffer from heat strokes, as well as the town catching on flames. Superboy has to quickly stop it from from going too far and stops it just in time. And of course, one of the townspeople say, "Great scientist, Bunk, you almost burnt down the whole town." And we see how he still blames Superboy, even though he should have took more time in patrolling the weather towers. And we see how he plans to do ones with seeds and gives them to people for free, which creates a luscious kind of forest to replace the one that got burnt down. But of course, something goes wrong. Superboy goes in and sees that the trees have become alive from the rains and chemicals, but manages to stop it just in time. And now the townspeople hate Lex Luthor's guts and don't want anything to do with him. So Lex Luthor decides to use the kryptonite now and tries to kill Superboy and gloats with the antidote. But Superboy, using his super breath, catches it in time, but Superboy decides not to press charges or have brought Lex Luthor in, as he knows there's still good in him, and mainly leaves off, knowing that if he will ever become a great scientist or a criminal, and we know exactly what's going to happen to him. So I think the story is surprisingly simple and meant to be a message and a cautionary tale that sometimes going the distance can be costly, as any form of hatred and rivalry is a waste of time, energy, and resources. You can kind of tell Superboy does try to be a friend to Lex, and knows that Lex can do good, but it's kind of clear Lex Luthor plays the victim while not admitting his own mistakes, as he played with chemicals that he wasn't too sure of, despite Superboy's warnings. So I think this story definitely deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.